Welcome to the U.S. Enterprise Mobility and Security Community Call for January 2017. It's our first for this year. We're just so thrilled that you chose to join us today. I've got a great lineup of content, so we're just going to dive right in and get to that for you. First and foremost, just to walk through the agenda real quickly, welcome again. I've got some community announcements that I'd like to share with you, as well as some training resources. And then I'm going to share a little bit about what's coming in February. We've got some really cool topics that we're going to do for you next month as well. So we'll be doing that. And then we're going to spend most of our time today. We've got a special guest from a company called Lookout. We've got a couple of guys here that are here to share what they're doing and what their partnership with Microsoft is all about and how you as partners can tap into that. I'm getting some messages saying they're not seeing the slides advance here, so if you would just bear with me one more time, we'll make sure that's working for everybody too. Perfect. Okay, so first and foremost, wanted to let you know the Microsoft Inspire Conference, this is formerly known as the Worldwide Partner Conference, is coming up this July, and you're saying, wow, it's January and you're already talking about July. The reason I'm doing that is I want to let you know the price on this is going to go up on January 31st. So you got to register by January 30th to take advantage of the lowest price we're going to have all year long. This conference did sell out last year, so if you're interested in joining us, this is a great opportunity to come, meet the Microsoft team, hear from senior leaders across the company, network with other partners, network with vendors, get to know a whole bunch of folks. Pricing goes up on the 31st. Make sure that you sign up before that to take advantage of that. Great opportunity to go sort of convince hopefully your boss or whoever controls the budget in your company that this is a good investment. Make sure you go and do that here this week before the price goes up. On our community, so I wanted to just share with you some of the resources that we have. Don't know how many of you are on our Yammer group, but that is our primary method of communication with you throughout the days and weeks of each month. We share information. You guys post a lot of really great content for us as well. So if you are on Yammer, please come and join us in that Yammer community. We'd love to see you there. That's a really good way to tap into us. We also do a blog series, so you can see the links on the screen there. We've actually started doing more, and so we've started sort of a secondary blog on that. But there's some really good resources for you there. In fact, our guest speakers today from Lookout helped us co-author a blog that we just posted the other day that tell more about what they've got going on as well. So make sure you're tapping into that blog. And then, of course, we've got our monthly call. You're here, you know about that call, so I won't explain that any further, other than to tell you that there is an archive of the calls available. So if you want to go back and check out any of the calls that we've had over the last several months, they are available. We've posted them to our YouTube channel. You can see the call and the topic that we talked about each month. You can see September through November. We spent quite a bit of time on the EMS E5 features that came out earlier this year. So make sure you're tapping into those resources as well if you want to get caught up on what we've been going through. And then in December, I know a lot of you are out of the office celebrating the holidays with friends and family. We did do a call where we talked about some of the resources that Microsoft has made available to you as partners for EMS selling and deployment, both on the technical and the sales side, including demo resources, good presentation decks, a whole bunch of stuff. We covered a lot in that hour. So if you're interested in that, go check those out. As of course, with every single call that we do, we post the slide deck to our Yammer group. And I just put a screenshot of that Yammer group there in the bottom of this slide. I highlighted the Files button up in that red toolbar on the top. At any time, you can just head into Yammer, click that Files button, and you will see the slides for each presentation. Today's slides will be uploaded here later in the hour, and we'll get those out to you as well. I want to let you know as well that during today's call, if you have any questions, down in the lower left-hand corner of your browser, there's a chat window. You can type questions for me or for any of our speakers. So, or if you have any feedback for us, that's the place to submit it. Get questions a lot about training resources. So if you're interested in helping your teams build out a good training plan to learn EMS, both at a sales level, a technical level, deep dive on a specific service, or sort of see the broad ecosystem of EMS, we've got a learning path that we've put together for you, and we're going to commit to updating this about once a quarter to keep it really fresh and relevant. You can see the link on the slide there. This is posted in our Yammer group. You can download it. It's in an Excel file format, so you can go in and jump in, grab it, tweak it, whatever you need to do to make it useful for your team. We wanted it to be a highly flexible tool for you. Because it's a community asset, if you have any feedback on it or questions or anything throughout using it, please send that to us. I'm Nick Johnson. I'm one of the leads here. You can send it to us or just post it in the Yammer group as well. We'll see it there. 2 upcoming events I think you might be interested in. One is happening tomorrow. This is kind of cool. The EMS product teams, so the folks actually doing the development and bringing us the great solutions that we're out there selling, they're going to do a Twitter chat. And that Twitter chat is going to give you a chance to directly engage with the product team, ask them questions. They've said this isn't really going to be a support forum. So if you've got something that's broken, obviously in 140 character tweets, it's a little hard to troubleshoot things. But if you have questions about the product, about roadmaps, about features, whatever, this is going to be the place to do that. All the information about timing, how to tag your tweets so that they get seen by the right people at the right time is in that link that's on the slide here. Again, I'll post the link to download the deck here in a little bit. On the flip side of that, we've got some technical deep dive training coming up on EMS. You can see here in the screenshot, there's actually 2 events coming in on the Americas side of things, one in February and one in March. This is a 3-day event. It's virtual. Any partner can sign up to be a part of it. It is delivered by our partner services team, so they're sort of a connected group within our support organization. They do a lot of technical stuff on EMS. If you happen to be coming in from outside the U.S., there's also deliveries across the world that you can tap into. Again, there's a link on the slide here where you'll be able to go. You scroll down the page, you'll see what I have on the screenshot there, and you can sign up for any one of those deliveries. Strongly encourage you to check it out. I signed up for one just to see what it would be like. It looks like it's about a 4-hour day deal each day of the delivery, so you're not committing a full 8-hour day to it. It's about half your day. You'll get to do some exercises, get to hear from some really good speakers, so tap into that. And then the last thing I've got is coming in February in our community, we are going to focus on the new Intune on Azure portal. So if you haven't seen some of the announcements that have come out in the last month or so, this is now in preview. All the existing tenants are in the process of being migrated from the old Silverlight portal that ran on Internet Explorer up to running in the native Azure portal. This is an amazing thing. It's not just a portal migration. They've added a ton of new features. They've added APIs. Those of you that wanted to do Intune APIs, they're here now. You're going to be able to do things like PowerShell script, things in Intune, which is going to make deployment for you and your customers so much easier. Working on bringing some blogs to you on this, working on getting with some product team folks to get them on the phone to explain some of these new features for you as partners and what they mean, how you can take advantage of those. So really, really connect with us coming up here in February and follow us on Yammer and follow the blogs and everything because there's going to be a bunch of information coming out from there. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers from Lookout. We have Clayton Bernard, and Clayton is the Senior Director for Strategic Alliances, primarily working with Microsoft at this point, and Greg LaRoche, and Greg is part of the product marketing team for Lookout. And if you saw the blog I posted last week and actually co-authored with these guys, Lookout is really doing some cool partnerships and integrations that support EMS. It fills a lot of really, really needed spaces out there with your customers. So we wanted to give you a chance to hear from them today, ask them questions, and then learn more about how you can engage them on future opportunities that you have with customers that are doing EMS that may also have a need for Lookout. So I'm going to turn it over to Clayton. Clayton, welcome, my friend.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name's, again, Clayton Barnard. I'm actually out of Seattle, so obviously helping from our end run our alliance with Microsoft. That's obviously the place to be. I first want to thank both Dave Gifford and Nick for helping first setting this up and making sure all this is happening, so really appreciate your help there. So what I'm going to do is I've got just a few slides, and the first part of this, what I want to do is cover who Lookout is. Not a sales pitch, but I do think it's important because of the partnership with Microsoft that you guys in the partner community certainly need to be able to sort of understand and explain to customers why is this partnership relative, why did Microsoft and Lookout partner, and why Lookout versus other security companies that are out there. Then I'm going to talk about the partnership itself. It's actually unique in certain cases. And then Greg will pick it up at the end, and he's actually going to walk through some of the more detail regarding the integration itself. That is, he'll talk about the points of integration. That's with Intune and AAD today, and he'll go through conditional access and some of the flows, which is really one of the highlights and one of the main focus areas for many of our customers. And then we'll close out. We'll make sure we leave some time at the end for Q&A. Again, if you go to the next slide, Nick. So the first slide here is really just talking about the environment, and this is really about why should an enterprise customer care about this? That is this really a problem or not? And as you can see from this build on this slide, this is obviously an iOS phone, and a lot of folks used to think that iOS was secure, that Apple's secure. We have seen, especially the last few months, we issued, and we did a lot of work with Microsoft on this as well, about a threat called Pegasus, which was extremely effective at completely exploiting the Apple devices. And so we learned, as well as enterprise customers, that if you have a mobile device and if you don't take the adequate protections and the security, of which of course we believe EMS with Lookout provides, you're absolutely at risk. And the reason this is becoming more critical and it's becoming more of a center stage sort of issue for your customers is because of these things on this screen. And as we all know, everyone, basically, you spend all of your time with your device. Most people don't even leave them, so they're with it all the time. But if you look at what can be compromised on that device, it is no longer just about being able to compromise your credentials, that then could give you access to all of your corporate data and corporate resources. Even more scarier to some people is the fact that you can actually put surveillanceware on it, turn on your camera, turn on your mic, and record everything that occurs, and you basically own the phone. So that's exactly what Pegasus did. So there's a lot more awareness around this issue and the problem, both for iOS and Android, than we have ever seen before. So this is why a lot of CIOs now are really starting to pay attention. If you go to the next slide, Nick, just want to give you an oversight of who Lookout is. So really at a high level, people often refer to us as a startup. We're really not. We've been around for almost 10 years now. We started as a consumer company. And part of the reason that we've been successful, and again, part of the reason actually Microsoft was interested in the partnership is we've been around for 10 years. We have started this. We're actually the first company in this business. And over that 10-year period, it's allowed us to really refine our product and to really gain a lot of data and intelligence about this space. We are focused for this presentation, and we've been doing this for over a year now. One of our products, and this is core to what we're doing with Microsoft, is really a focus on enterprise. So we do have that consumer sort of background, but now what we have is a solid focus on enterprise customers and taking all that knowledge and data set and applying it to the enterprise problems. So we are a security company focused on mobile, and we're doing the majority of our work now actually for enterprises. We are worldwide, not relevant obviously as much for you guys in the U.S., but just to give you the sense that your customers, many of which those customers are global, we do have really good presence across EMEA as well as in Asia Pac, and we're well represented in terms of not only support but all the other functions. And lastly, patents. Now, this is an important thing because we actually have more patents than even Check Point does as an entire company. All of our 95 patents are focused on mobile. This is more patents than anyone else in this space actually combined. So we are absolutely innovative. We actually are spending up to 50% of our revenue, believe it or not, on innovation and R&D. So we are actually putting money back into our business. If you look at the right, those are some of the partnerships. The top two, of course, are most relevant for this. And I'll describe the Microsoft partnership in a few minutes. But the Apple partnership is important because we do have a unique relationship with them. We're the only mobile security company that we're part of their development program as far as partnerships. And we're doing a lot of really good, unique things with Apple. And that's important because obviously your customers will have a mixed environment generally between iOS devices, which are the majority within enterprises for the U.S., as well as Android. So our ability to really address those devices, we can do that in a way that really no other company can. On the bottom, that's important because these are the original partnerships that we've had. These are very good, enduring partnerships, and these are global. The reason this is relevant for all of us is many of your customers, in fact, some of you probably have Lookout as a client on your phone. So these providers will either bundle in Lookout at the point of sale. So you get a phone from T-Mobile, you're probably going to have a Lookout client on it. And it's also bundled in with insurance. So globally, then, this represents a great footprint for us to be able to really understand what is that threat environment and how do we then address it for not just consumer, but for enterprises. If you go to the next slide. So we'll give you a taste of really what the back end of this looks like. Now, I'm going to walk through this really quick. I'm not going to get deep on this, but this slide is really important. And if I were to say what is the most important thing now that we are providing in terms of value to Microsoft as well as then your customers, is really based on this. And this is the secret sauce. All of our company, we have from day one put our data into the cloud. So we are a SaaS company, no on-prem devices. All of our basic intelligence is within the cloud, and we need that level of compute in order to do what we do in terms of analyzing the code and providing that protection. If you look at the far left, that's important because if you see 90,000 apps, we actually collect over 90,000 mobile applications every day. We've been doing this since the beginning. And these are applications that are either brand new or they're variants. And these are posted on app stores. They are in stores that are not authorized. So we crawl the web. We have access to other application stores. And we're pulling this data together and we're doing an analysis on it. We also combine that with a 100 million sensor database. So over the last 10 years, we have now over 100 million customers in over 100 countries. And what that provides us is the largest data set, mobile data set that there is. And so we really understand if there's a variant of a code that might bypass a traditional AV scan, et cetera, an IT shop, we will pick it up. So all that data set then goes into the our big data set for the analysis. This is where a lot of our patents lie, is our ability to figure out what is really malicious and what isn't. This really reduces the false positives for the IT group within your customer. We are not noisy. We are very quiet. If we say you have a problem on your phone, which we'll talk about on how to self-remediate it, it's a problem. So we have analyzed over 30 million applications. To put that in perspective, if you go to most of the app stores, the big top three, they have between 4 and 5 million apps total. So it gives you a sense of the scale. And on the far right, obviously all that comes together, and what we do is we will basically convict, which is we basically flag as malicious, and we deny those applications from ever getting on to different application stores. We do over 5,000 apps. So this is relevant because if you listen to Brad Anderson, you listen to Microsoft, and the discussions around EMS and the rest of the value around the Microsoft solutions, really a lot of that is based on the intelligence within the cloud, the ability to collect data as threat signals and be able to analyze it and present it to the customer so they can take action on it. And so this is adding a brand new element for Microsoft to be able to then, of course, apply to the customer. If you go to the next slide. So this is just real quick, and go ahead and build it out if you would, Nick. This just shows that, I've described this, but just to give you a sense, the first product that we are focused on with Microsoft now is an enterprise product, and that's what we're focused on. But again, we've got the consumer background on the personal on the left. We are also doing things on app security. We're working on some of this with Microsoft for some future solutions that we're going to do together. So this is, again, understanding applications, vetting that before they even hit the street. We do that for a lot of global 500s, as well as threat intelligence. This is unique data and threat feeds to customers so they really understand what that environment looks like. Again, we're going to expose some of that, and I'll mention here in a minute, into some products within Microsoft. So if you go to the next slide. So this is really why it matters to that CIO, to Microsoft, and to your customer. Is what we do is basically wrap the phone in these three key vectors. The upper left is the operating system. A lot of people think an MDM will cover them from all of this. That MDMs don't. That's not the purpose of an MDM. It is to manage. It is not really security per se or detection and that sort of thing. MDMs do provide, of course, with Intune as well, some really good jailbreak capability. Ours goes much deeper. So we're able to basically untrick those jailbreaks that looks like it's fine, but in fact it's not. Applications on the right, I think that's what most people think we do. That's key. But we also detect if is an app malicious or is it noisy. So we can even now tell you in an enterprise environment, they may have an application that is not flagged as malicious, but it may be against a compliance policy as an enterprise. That's very important to many of your customers now because within the compliance office and the security group, Those guys really care. Hey, do I have an application that exposes my data or my contact information to, let's say, a third-party server in China that's not supposed to be there? So we can provide that data. Last is a network. This really, for most people, includes man in the middle. So if you're at Starbucks, we can detect, hey, is this a good network? Is it bad? Is it being intercepted? Man in the middle. And we can provide that protection as well. So if you go to the next slide. So let me talk about the partnership and one more, Nick. So this is my last slide. I'm going to hand over to Greg, and he'll get into the rest of how does all this work. Let me just give you a sense of, again, this is important. This is actually provides, in addition to the data set and sort of our reputation as a company, this also provides the credibility of Microsoft and Lookout and why this is important and why we're really providing we think some good value to the customers. It is a global partnership. So again, like I mentioned, it includes a number of things. Really, the partnership is focused on 4 key things. The first is product integration, first of which we're going to describe as part of EMS, so Intune and AAD. The second is go-to-market, so making sure that we go to market together as one team. And I say one team, I mean the partners, Microsoft sales teams and support, as well as Lookout. So that's really the go-to-market team. The third is Microsoft as an internal user. So this is not really public, but for you guys, just so you know, every Microsoft employee that has iOS or Android will be mandated to have Lookout on the device, and that's happening as we speak, so that's being rolled out. Every employee, and if they don't have it, they will not be able to access any Microsoft or any corporate data. So that will be a required compliance item. And the last is investment. Microsoft did invest a sizable amount into Lookout to help us accelerate development together. Our executive sponsor is Brad Anderson. I'm sure all of you know who he is. He is an awesome champion of ours. He actually spoke at our sales conference this past Monday. And so, when he speaks to customers in EMS, especially larger enterprises, he will most often include Lookout in that. So this is very much a top-down driven partnership, and Microsoft has been great throughout this. Just a couple things on the product before I hand it over to Greg, just to give you a sense of, Greg will describe where we are now, but let me give you a sense of where we're going next. The first is the platform itself. So today, as Nick mentioned, we are on the Silverlight platform. That is moving, as he mentioned, into Q1, into the Ibiza or the Azure portal. So we are working to take all the functionality we have today that's built within the Intune console, that is Lookout, and that is being ported over to that new platform. We are also adding, and we hope to have this out by March, some new capabilities. Those things that we're getting in there, we're trying very hard. It's aggressive, but we're putting in an application risk control product set, and that basically gives you that sort of, is this a noisy application or not? We're adding MAM, so man in the middle, MAM only, so managed application management, and that's a really big topic for your customers. If they don't want to manage the environment, but they want to manage the apps, we're going to be doing that with Intune, so that'll come out hopefully soon. And then we're going to expose more intelligence into that. So we'll be exposed into the Microsoft Intelligence Security Graph, into the Azure Security Portal, and so it's really going to enrich the value of that. We're also looking at how do we integrate more with 365. And then lastly, Windows 10. We will be part of the Windows 10 ATP service, so that's Advanced Threat Protection. And so all that, of course, comes together in SPE, so that's really relevant. And that is it on this slide. So let me hand it over to Greg to walk you through the rest, and then we'll finish up. Greg?
So, before Greg jumps in, there's a couple questions that came up for you, Clayton. Can I throw those out there?
Yes, please.
Awesome. First one's pretty easy. Is there a Windows 10 mobile component to Lookout?
Great question. Not yet.
Okay.
So we showed up at the party, as it were, with iOS and Android. We are actually under contract by agreement to provide to Microsoft the Windows 10 client. We believe that, and all of us have been kicking this around, that what that's going to be is really not the Windows Mobile. It's going to be the Windows Universal. So I would expect, not within the next few months, but the goal is certainly to put our client on, let's say, a Surface device.
Okay. 2 other questions. Does Lookout only work with the Intune company portal enrollment process, or does it work with the MAM without enrollment, just for the mobile application management piece? Yeah,
today it's going to go through the company portal. Greg can talk about that. I will just tell you that the MAM only We are working through that now. All of us recognize that that is a top need. In every customer environment I go into, almost, and certainly globally, they say, hey, what can we do with MAM only? So we don't have all the answers on how that's going to look yet,
Okay.
but we are rapidly trying to kick that thing out.
Great. And then the last one, I'll summarize some different questions together. Basically, Lookout comes as an app, correctly? And if so, can it be deployed via the MAM without enrollment, or does it require it to be deployed in the MDM solution?
So no, it doesn't require MDM.
Okay.
Greg can talk about more of that. We do have deployments in unmanaged environments, and there's several ways that we can do that, which are pretty simple. And so not required. And in fact, that's a good question, because just so you know, in terms of the sales process, the value that we're seeing here is customers like, how do Microsoft asks us too is, really, why are we doing this? And I'll tell you that and this resonates certainly with Microsoft and partners, is one of the top key reasons is to get consumption up within Intune. So obviously, customer has EMS, they haven't deployed Intune, or the consumption is too low. They either have no MDM, or let's say it's AirWatch or Mobile Iron. We are interoperable. In fact, we support Mobile Iron and AirWatch as well. That's good, because a lot of your customers may have AirWatch or Mobile Iron in particular. They want to transition off of Mobile Iron and at some point go to Intune because they're going into 365 and all that. By us getting in there, we can actually help accelerate the deployment and migration from a Mobile Iron environment, let's say AirWatch, over to Intune. And even in an unmanaged environment, they put Lookout in, they start using it, and when they understand the conditional access policies and capability that Gray will describe, light bulbs start to come on for a lot of them. Like, you know what? That is really cool. We need to just add it to the rest of our environment, and suddenly you've got EMS more deployed.
Sounds great. Sounds like the partners are thinking ahead to Greg's session. So, Greg, let's get you going here. Thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours.
All right, great. Thanks, Nick. And thanks, everyone, for spending time with us today. Again, my name is Greg LaRoche. I work on the product management team at Lookout, and I am based in Boston. And the team there is really focused on the extensions around the Lookout platform that include third-party technologies like EMS. So that's what we do, and happy to talk about it today. I'm going to probably take about 15 minutes or so talking through the integration itself and the components and how it works and what the value that we talk about is, and how that's represented to customers, and a little bit about deployment, because we got a question on that too, which is good. And yeah, hopefully leave a little time at the end for some questions. So this is a slide that should be very familiar to everyone. It's the basic kind of EMS landscape and the major components in that environment. Really, the point of this slide is to show you where Lookout fits. And so we integrate into the EMS stack in two different places. One is the Azure AD directory, and the other is the actual Intune cloud service. So we're doing different communications to those different components for different reasons. So at a high level, we talk to the Azure service, the Azure directory service, as a source of truth for users and groups and the device information we need from the system. And that's all lives there. And so we're able to communicate with Azure AD as a trusted application, multi-tenant service within that tenant. And we call into that tenant, and we find out when new users come and when users go and groups change around and all that stuff, because we use that information to extend our service to the devices. And so then we use the Intune connection to actually transmit security and threat information to Intune, so that when a threat is encountered on a device that Lookout is protecting, that information is sent to Intune through this interface. And then Intune evaluates that information against policy and may or may not create a non-compliant condition for a device based on the rules. And then if a device is not compliant, then a whole bunch of other things happen. And that's basically how we talk to these services. So at a very high level, the users come in, we know about them, we get them services, we can push them the application, for example, through Intune. They activate, now they're protected. If a risk happens, we're informing Intune. Intune is evaluating, and then can make any upstream compliance actions that are appropriate based on the rule set. So that's kind of at a high level what it is. Right? So we'll talk a little bit more about the specific value and how we talk about the benefits of this in a minute, but that's just kind of the what is it slide, so everyone knows kind of what we're talking about. So when we talk about the value, we really talk about three main areas of value, and one of them is most important of all, I think, and so we'll spend a little more time on that. But we usually look at it in kind of three basic areas of customers. This resonates with customers. One, and not the least of which, is that the management model is fully integrated. When these two systems work together, it's really easy to manage. And the reason for that is we're using one directory, one set of groups, one set of roles. Everything is the same as it always was, except you just can extend that to you can extend a new service to those same groups and people. So it's nice because you're not managing people and devices in some other place like you could with another MDM, for example. This is all managed holistically. And that gives the administrators a nice feeling of confidence that they can manage the solution, and also cost. They don't have to hire people to manage new things, right? So that's a big benefit. A big part of the EMS pitch, as you all know, is that completeness of the solution, the comprehensiveness of the solution. And this fits right into that story, right? So you don't have to break your story when you add Lookout. It's all built in. That's good. And so the second thing is really where the customer light bulbs really go on, as Clayton was saying, is around the risk-based conditional access. So what does that mean? Well, conditional access, you know, right? So how does it get risk-based? Well, basically, when Lookout is on a device, it's always watching for increased risk. So that could be a network attack, it could be an OS exploit, or it could be a piece of malware. Anything that's happening on the device that introduces risk gets elevated, right? And so the risk of the device can now become important, or actually essential, in the calculation of compliance on that device. That's where we get our risk-based conditional access. So if the risk is increased beyond a threshold that is set by rule, you can lock the device out of corporate assets using conditional access. So that's really the big benefit. So when the enterprises see this, they really connect the dots, and they say, well, yeah, I don't want a compromised device accessing my corporate information, right? Because it's going God knows where, right? So the device is compromised. I don't want it connecting to my information. But it might be a device that I can't wipe or reset or delete because maybe it's not fully, it's managed, but it's not fully corporate owned. Well, now I don't have to do that. I can just block access as long as that threat remains. And when the threat is resolved on that device, access is restored. And all that happens without without a help desk, right? So it's a really powerful story. So as people really start to think about how mobile devices are going to access their corporate information, having a conditional access capability is important. Having that capability also be risk aware and risk centric is even more important. So it's really the amplification of the value of this feature is really important to customers. So that's what we're hearing. And so the last piece is really just the extent to which we protect a mobile device. So it's really not just about malware, although the malware threat is real. We convict 5,000 applications every day. We pull apps out of the app stores every day, both iTunes and Google. So that's not, I mean, a lot of our competitors kind of downplay that and say, well, malware on mobile is not real. Well, our data says otherwise, right? And happy to go deep on that with anybody. But also these other threats are quite important. So network types, we do see compromised Wi-Fi networks. We see the attackers getting very sophisticated about how they obscure and hide a malicious network in amongst the friendly networks. So you really need a sophisticated detection technology to find that, and we provide that. And then, you really, if the devices themselves are compromised at the OS level, you want to know that, right? So all that stuff together provides you that complete protection of your mobile threat landscape. And that's really what Lookout is all about, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the integration, how it works. So basically, we're going to use a workflow to describe it because it's really the easiest way to kind of get your head around it. And it's very, very simple to understand how this all works. And it's very simple for the user, and it's very simple for the administrator. So that's one of the good side effects of how we built this platform. Nine plus years of consumer security experience has taught us how to make a user-friendly experience. Users that use our consumer product don't have to use it. It's not mandated. It's voluntary. They want to use it. And so we've made it an attractive, non-threatening, informative experience that's not too noisy and not too scary. And so that's how we approach it. And as a result, in the enterprise, our application is very well used and well thought of. It's not really, a lot of security solutions get rejected by users in the enterprise. This is one that users actually like to use, so that's good. So what happens when a user encounters some kind of threat? Well, let's say a piece of malware gets installed on a device, or even just gets downloaded. It doesn't even have to be installed. It just has to appear on the device. Well, Lookout is going to detect that, and it's going to inform the console of the Lookout administrator, as we would normally, but also at the same time, we're informing the Intune console or the Intune system via the API we built together with Microsoft. And so what's happening then is, all right, so now the systems are aware of threat. At the same time, a rule can be evaluated in Intune for conditional access, and if the threat is of a level that's too high, violates the rule, then the conditional access rules come into play immediately. And that device will remain non-compliant and unable to access the identified services until the threat is resolved. So then the next piece of this workflow is how the threat is most commonly resolved. So one of the things Lookout is particularly good at is communicating with the end user. So when the end user gets a threat on their device, we tell them about it. We don't necessarily want to, create fear and uncertainty, but we tell them what's going on with the change they just made on their device. We say, okay, we just saw a change on your device, and here's what it represents in terms of risk. We recommend you remove it immediately, and there's a big button that says remove. We find over 95% of the time, the user clicks the button and removes the threat very quickly. And so 95% of the time, you may not even have to have a very long period of access revocation. The users are being made aware of the threat, they're removing the threat, they can just continue being productive very quickly, and that's nice. But for those 5% of people that don't remove the threat, those are the ones you want the rule to kick in and block their access, right, until they resolve the threat. And eventually, if they want access to their information, they're going to resolve the threat. And but 95% of the time it happens very quickly. And so that's what we do. The user clicks the remove button, the threat is removed from the device. Lookout is now returned into a secured state. We tell Intune that the device now represents a secured state. The risk is gone. The access rules are reevaluated, and the device is returned to a compliant state in Intune. And so that's really all there is to it. It's very simple. It almost always does not require help desk intervention, and it's all based on rules that can be preset and allocated to various groups within the organization. So that's basically how it works. That's what we do. And it's the same for a network-based threat. Like we did a malware example. This is a bad Wi-Fi spot. So device connects to compromised Wi-Fi, same exact thing. Console gets notified, Intune gets notified. Rules can be applied. In this case, we're blocking access to SharePoint while the person's on bad Wi-Fi. We tell the user how to fix it. The user fixes it. They get their access back. And it's the same exact loop. Whether or not it's malware or a network threat or an OS level threat, it's really all the same kind of workflow for the user. They just know there's something bad on their device. We're going to help them fix it, and then they can get access to the things they need to be productive. So that's at a high level how it works. We talked a little bit about how we talk about the value of it. Lastly, we're just going to spend a little time on how we deploy, and then we'll have some time at the end. So this is really the Silverlight snapshot of Intune console. This is part of it. This is the user experience that's being moved and ported over to the Azure portal. But it used to look like this, and or still does for another few weeks. And the important thing to note here is this is where the policy gets set. You set your compliance policy in Intune, and then that policy is informed by data coming from Lookout. So Lookout is the source of detection and protection. And Intune is really your management layer, where the rules are and where the enforcement happens, right? And so it's a very symbiotic relationship between the management tier that is provided by the MDM and Intune and the lookout tier, which is providing the security detection and notification service. And so that's really how they work together. It's expressed in that workflow we went through, but really, it does require configuration in both worlds, right? So you have to have rules set up in Intune that require lookout risk levels to be acceptable, and then you have to have on the lookout side the scheme of risk levels that you want to enforce. So we can talk about that too. All right. So enrollment. We got a question about enrollment. Enrollment normally is, because the goal of the security project is to get enrollment, right? Is to get people to use it, because security is only as good as it's actually used and properly implemented. And so the most optimal experience for the user is what we call automatic activation or auto activation. And auto activation is achieved in our world by pushing the app from Intune to the device using policy. So when the app shows up on the device, a couple of things happen. One, when your policy is set up correctly, Lookout it can be a required device, and so the device can remain non-compliant until Lookout is installed and activated. The second thing you can do is you can pre-configure the device for activation within Intune, so that when the app arrives at the user, they experience what we call one-click activation or auto activation, which makes it super easy for the user to enroll. They're not typing in stuff, they're not logging into stuff, they're pushing a button and they're getting enrollment. So that's usually the optimal way we deploy our application. There are many other ways we can deploy Lookout. We can deploy it via email link, we can deploy it through, the question was asking, can we deploy it outside of Intune by pushing it through console or some other means? Yes, that's all true, but the activation models vary depending on which vector you use or which method you use. And so if you use auto activation and push the app from Intune, you get the most seamless enrollment. Okay, because basically what's going to happen is the user just activates company portal as they normally would, and the portal will tell them they're missing a required service, and that in order to be compliant, they've got to add Lookout, and we actually send them, either push them the app right then or send them to the Play Store, and they can install it themselves. Basically, either way works fine for the user because the application is already ready for activation when it hits their device. And so they basically just click the Lookout button and the device activates, and now they can access their productivity services. So that's really, it's really quite easy. Behind the scenes, the identity services are all being handled by Azure AD. So the authentication of the user into Lookout is their Azure AD identity, and we're able to pick that up from company portal. If the user has a recent login, they have a token, we can activate them seamlessly. If they don't have a recent login on the device in the Azure context, then they will be challenged for their Azure AD login, but they will be done, that's done the exact same way they do it every day. So they don't see any kind of new or weird things. They just basically have to log into their device as they normally would. And so that's really the user experience. Nothing new or scary for them to have to encounter, and so like we say, we get this seamless enrollment experience. And one last note I'll say is that you identify users for Lookout services using groups within Azure AD. So you can do a phased enrollment for your customer if they want to start off with one division or one group. It's very easy to do that. You just identify that group in Lookout as an enrollment group, and those are the devices that will get mapped and activated between the two systems, and no other devices will. And so you can do very, very good phased deployments that way. So there's a lot more detail than that we're very happy to talk about in other engagements. If you guys, as you guys encounter opportunities and you want to engage more closely with Lookout, we're going to talk about how you do that very shortly, and then we're happy to go into any level of detail you'd like. But for now, we can for now we can stop and take questions before we wrap on the partner slide, right?
Yeah, we do have some questions that have come in. First one is, being a cloud-based product, what happens when the mobile device goes into a place where, the data capability is turned off or unavailable or whatever? Does Lookout stop working? Does it have a local cache version that works? How does that function?
Yeah, it's a good question. We it's kind of the last one. We have a cached set of detection criteria that does work when a device is not connected to the cloud. There are some detection modes that do require the cloud analysis for zero-day detections and things that have never been seen before. We need the cloud connection for that to work. For more routine detections, those will work on or offline. We rarely see an offline attack being terribly relevant. I know it's something people talk about, but when you think about it, if you have a device that can't communicate, then the threat is fairly isolated. And so maybe you can take device information off of the device. Maybe that's the attack of concern, but that's you have to have physical possession. You have to do a lot of, that's a fairly hairy attack. That's like a lost device attack. So the most common thing, I know we have 100 million endpoints that we're seeing detections on. The most common scenario is an inadvertent malware encounter while online. That's the 99.5% use case, right? So that's really so it's a great question, but doesn't really represent a lot of enterprise risk. Most of the risk is for online devices.
Okay, great. Next question will be, how much data does Lookout consume of the user's data plan?
Yeah, it's very lightweight because all the heavy lifting is done in the cloud service. It was designed that way. The reason it was designed that way is because we understand on mobile devices we cannot kill the battery or the CPU. So it's a limited resource device, and that users want to use it for other things. And so, so one of the things Lookout's particularly good at is battery consumption. We think we're best in class there. Typical battery consumption numbers based on what's going on with the device are between 1% and 3% per day. So most users don't really even notice us. So it's not a tremendous amount of data on the data plan either, because what we're sending up and down to the cloud service is a optimized telemetry signal that we gather, that our agent gathers. So the agent is on the device, gathers the information it needs, packages that in our telemetry scheme, and sends that up to the cloud. And it's done in a very efficient way. So so we're very aware of all of those types of problems that people may see using other technologies. We're best in class there. So that's
great.
That's also a good question, but also one we have a pretty good answer for.
Yeah. Well, and speaking as just one of those Microsoft guys who uses it, I don't notice any difference with it pre and post installation on my iPhone. So, good testimony there, I guess, in terms of it didn't really hurt the battery life at all. A couple other questions. Does the conditional access feature require the users to be in Office 365, or can they be in like an on-prem workload or some sort of a hybrid workload?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's limited essentially in the current implementation. I know Clayton talked about extending to new user modes. Right now, in the current shipping version of this implementation, we integrate directly into the conditional access rule set in Intune. So that becomes the boundary of the control plane. So if Intune can control or provide conditional access to a service, then it can be integrated into this rule set. If it cannot, then it is not going to use Lookout as part of the rule set. Doesn't mean those rules don't work. It just means they don't include Lookout data. So
okay.
You can't have a hybrid environment where some rules have Lookout data and some rules don't. We're working towards a world where all the rules can have Lookout data, but we're not there yet.
Okay, great. Maybe just two quick questions, and then we'll give you guys a chance to wrap up and share your contact information too. This one might be really specific, but we've got a user who's actually setting up Lookout and is wondering, does it require membership in the Apple Developer Program in terms of signing the IPA file?
Yeah, if you're deploying the iOS version of the Lookout app, it is the normal deployment process is to have the IPA re-signed by an enterprise certificate and then deployed to devices through the MDM typically. So that's our deployment model. So there is not an iTunes public version of the enterprise application that's really suitable for doing all these features. There is a public App Store version, but it has a restricted feature set, and it doesn't really do all the things we're talking about. So yes. So the short answer is yes. You have to re-sign the iOS app and distribute it through the MDM. That's
okay.
Typical
Great.
model.
In terms of this being included, with ATP and the Secure Productive Enterprise, is there also a standalone cost to it?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and address that. So there's really two parts. The way it is today, your customers can purchase Lookout as is, without any integrations and all that, and off they go. They can, of course, deploy it and use it with AirWatch, Mobile Iron, of course, or Intune. So even if the customer gets EMS, of course, it's got Intune, and within it is the features that Greg mentioned. But to activate that, they would need either via trial or via subscription. They would still have to, of course, purchase a SaaS subscription with us. And then, of course, all the Lookout functionality and devices work. Regarding the SPE, we are not there yet. I wanted to really give you guys an insight as to where we're going so that your customers know, hey, if I'm a Microsoft shop and I'm moving that direction, I want to make sure I've got investment protection. They know that, hey, we're going to be with them for the long haul. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, we're going to take this mobile threat data and protection and all of that. We're going to expose it not just to, of course, Intune and AAD, but we'll also then, in moving forward, again, this is a few months out, but we'll be providing that to Windows 10 environments, again, via ATP, and some other environments as well. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last question will be... go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave. What we don't know is one thing we're working on is when we do that SPE, when we get to the point of, we know we're going to be bundled with Windows 10 ATP, but down the road, we're actually in active discussions about what will that actually look like for an SPE customer. So if I've got a customer that goes, E3, E5 on, it's EMS, Windows, whatever, or I do the full-blown SPE, where does Lookout show? Obviously, we're in a couple components, but would you get an active subscription with Lookout? We're working through that, so more to come.
Okay, sorry. Great. No, that's fine. Last question, and then I'll have you close us out with your contact information, would be if a customer's in a hybrid setup, they've got System Center Configuration Manager and Intune, does it work in that environment?
Yes. So the short answer is yes, it works. Because we're using kind of a set of, our interfaces are abstracted through the API, it really doesn't matter so much how the management tier is working. So basically, if Intune can do it, then it keeps working, right? So there were some limitations early on between hybrid modes and Intune, and those had nothing to do with us, but they were real. And then Intune has worked on resolving many of those or most of those. So it's actually to a point now where SECM can be used in hybrid mode with Intune, and so that has no bearing on our integration. It works either way, right, to us. So, yeah.
Great. So if these folks want to contact you guys and learn more and find out how to partner with you, how can they do that?
Right. So if you look at the screen or the page we've got up, there's really a couple methods, and it's sort of like easiest to, well, they're all easy, but first is if you look at that link we've got right there, as you can see, Lookout. That's of course our site. Within our site, you can request a free trial, contact the teams, you can do whatever. So obviously go to Lookout. There's actually a mailer, and I don't have it on here, but you can also send an email to Microsoft@lookout.com, and that Microsoft@lookout.com alias actually shoots that email to both a few Microsoft folks at corporate as well as me and some of the members of our team. So that's one method. Second, if you look here, I actually put in the 2 channel leads for the Americas, and if you consider what's east and what's west, sort of like Mississippi, just country and a half. So please feel free to email either of these 2 folks. Either east is Jim Sullivan, west is Steve Winfield. Actually, Steve was part of the Microsoft channel program in terms of Microsoft employee for like 10-something years. So he certainly has a good background there. And then on the bottom is me on the left, so feel free to reach out to me if I can help in any way. And on the left is Greg in case you've got something more technical. But certainly feel free. What I'd recommend is, best thing to do is reach out to one of those channel leads or both of them and just say, hey, we're interested, what's next? And those are the guys that will really work with you, go through the process, see if it makes sense for all of us, and then take you to the last step.
Sounds great. Hey, thank you both for spending some time with us today. To all the partners on the line, thank you for spending an hour with us. Be sure to tune in next month. We're going to talk about that Intune portal on Azure. I think that's going to be significant for all of us. We'll see you on the Yammer group. I will post the link to the recording and the slides here within the next day or so as soon as we've got those all queued up for you. Thanks for joining us today. We will talk to you soon.